All right, well, hello everyone, and thanks for joining us today. I think you're in for a really good session this morning and this afternoon, depending on where you are. I am Gene Zaino. I'm President and CEO of MBO Partners. And for those of you that perhaps don't know who MBO Partners is, on the next slide, we'll give you a little preview. Basically, what we do at MBO Partners is make it easy for you to launch and operate an independent career. We deliver a complete online business operating system that really simplifies how self-employed professionals and their clients work together. And we do it in a way that it's convenient, tax efficient, and legally compliant, but mostly really making it simple for both the independent worker and their client. And there's, without any setup costs, you basically plug into our online corporate platform and you have a full professional services back office infrastructure just ready to do business. And it's complete with a rich set of benefits and perks that you get for being in business for yourself. And what we're going to talk about today is very much about enabling yourself to take control and pilot your own career. And to learn more, you could go to mbopartners.com. Just a couple of housekeeping things here. You'll see up on your screen, you'll have up on the right your webinar controls. Please make sure that you are able to move that little control out of your way to see the full screen. And you could chat in the chat box there below. Enter your questions. We will have time at the end to answer these questions, but during the presentation, if you have questions, by all means, do not hesitate to go in there and write them in. And as a reminder, everyone will get copies of these slides, so you don't have to ask us for copies of the slides. You will get copies of them. We are doing live tweeting, and on the next slide, you'll see that it's hashtag MBOWeb. And if you want to tweet along, please do so. That would be great. So we're going to get right to our main topic today, and it's everyone is in for a real treat. I will tell you that. My friend Jay Samit is a person to know for sure. He has a talent to transform people, and I think you're going to get a sense of that. He helps them unleash their passion and about innovation, overcoming obstacles, and how to think bigger to embrace change. He provides disruptive solutions for many of the world's best organizations, including American Express, AT&T, Best Buy, Clinique, Coca-Cola, Disney, Ford, General Electric, Intel, LinkedIn, McDonald's, Microsoft, Procter & Gamble, Starbucks, Unilever, and a lot more. Simply put, Jay is a change agent who combines his bold vision and humor to motivate audiences to become disruptors within their organizations and their personal lives. He's a rare and dynamic entrepreneur, widely recognized as one of the world's leading experts on disruption and innovation. In fact, Wired magazine says Jay Samit has the coolest job in the industry. Everyone from the Pope to the President have called on Jay to orchestrate positive change within their organization. He helped grow pre-IPO companies such as LinkedIn. He held senior management roles at EMI, Sony, and Universal Studios. He pioneered breakthrough advances in mobile video, internet advertising, e-commerce, social networks, e-books, and digital music. He's raised hundreds of millions of dollars for startups, sold companies to Fortune 500 firms, transformed entire industries, revamped government institutions, and for 3 decades he continues to be at the forefront of global trends. And one of Jay's current roles, and amongst everything else, is he's the CEO of Sea Change International, a NASDAQ publicly traded company and the world's leading multi-screen video services company. He also is an adjunct professor at USC and teaches innovation at America's largest engineering school, and is the author of the best-selling book, Disrupt You, Master Personal Transformation, Seize Opportunity, and Thrive in the Era of Endless Innovation, which is going to be the topic for today. He's a regular contributor to the Wall Street Journal and host of its documentary series, WSJ Startup of the Year. In fact, you might have seen Jay appear on ABC, Bloomberg, CBS, CNN, Fox, and NBC, or you might have followed him on his daily motivational tweets at Samit. So get ready to be inspired by a true expert on transformational change. I am absolutely thrilled to give you Jay Samit. Jay, thank you for being here, and take it from here.
Thanks, Gene, and that was too long of an intro. I am blushing, but I appreciate everybody's time. Your time's valuable, and what I'm here to do today is try to get you to break down some of the assumptions that have either held you back or get you to think of yourself and your world in a different way. So what's unique about this audience is you didn't buy into that dream of go to the big company, work there for 20 years, get the watch, and that's what life is about. Our world has fundamentally changed from that era. You know, we're no longer about the watch that's going to be passed down. It's what is disruption? How has the world changed? How is it that we have self-made billionaires in their 20s and we're now producing one every month? It's not that these people are special, especially connected. Matter of fact, most of the world's billionaires right now were self-made. They didn't inherit. What they did do is they looked at the world differently. And so in Disrupt You, I spent a lot of time with these people and really started looking at what was the pattern that they went through, how can it be repeated, and what can you learn from their success. So let's start with how disruptive the world presently is. When you look at the biggest hotel chain, so to speak, who's putting the most people in beds each night, they don't own a single building. The largest taxi company operating in the world today owns no cars. The biggest media company isn't a Hollywood studio. It's actually a company that produces no media, just monetizes the media that its audience produces. And the largest retailer, bigger than Amazon, has no inventory. It's Alibaba. So the assumption of what a business is and how to grow it is fundamentally changing. And where that change comes from is everybody wants to change the world, yet no one focuses on changing themselves. So I'm sure everybody that's listening has sat at the airport, looked up at the screen, and saw that their flight was canceled. And what most of us do is sit there and go, oh wow, I have a problem, there's nothing you can do about it. To a disruptor or an entrepreneur, if you have problems, that's the greatest thing. Congratulations, you will be successful. Because all that a problem is an opportunity in disguise. Success is solving problems for others. If you can solve for millions of people, you become a billionaire. So somebody that I worked with years ago, his flight was canceled. He was stuck in Puerto Rico trying to get to the Virgin Islands. He looked around the airport and saw other people were stranded too, did the math in his head of how many people, what he would have to rent a plane for, and figured out how he and his girlfriend could fly for free. And that's how a high school dropout from the music industry launches a billion-dollar airline. It really is that simple. It's about looking at a solution instead of looking at a problem. So, how can you become a disruptor? How can you raise your target and change what you want to get out of this life? So you have a couple choices. I personally am not one of these people who believes in reincarnation, so I'm trying to get the most out of this one life. So quite simply, the purpose in life is to figure out how to have a life of purpose. And the way that you transform your career is by changing the assumptions of yourself. You were told from a young age you can't do this, you can't do that. So we're going to talk about how to change yourself and three major changes that are happening in the world that may cost you your career, or as we said, may be the greatest opportunity for you. The choice is yours. Oops, hit the wrong button. So the first thing, that's the plastic substrate that goes into 3D printing. We'll be talking about 3D printing, and again, it doesn't matter whether you're in technology or not. 3D printing, just-in-time manufacturing will change your life. 3D printing can be everything from body organs to buildings, and we'll talk about that briefly. The second is mobile. Mobile is fundamentally changing. You are now one click away on your phone from 6 billion consumers, which means you only have to be right for a nanosecond to become a billionaire. It is really that important to understand that. And the third is a fun one of mine. If you can figure out what an electric drill has to do with the future, you're brighter than I am, but we'll get to it in a little bit. So 2 seconds about me. Gene did enough. I have spent my career either building companies from the outside or being an entrepreneur, being hired to set up new divisions of giant companies on the inside. And the same methodology works in each case. I didn't go to the right schools. I wasn't connected. I came out of school basically and I couldn't find a job. So I printed business cards for $1 and realized nobody would hire me, but they would hire the company that I pretended to work for. And I went around and realized that with a good story and some hustle, you can start a business. And at the end of the day, what I figured out in building my first multi-million-dollar company was there's only 2 things that you need to survive and thrive: drive and persistence. Everything else can be hired. So in the course of my career, I've gotten to partner with some of the most disruptive, innovative people on the planet. And what I've learned from them is everybody followed the identical path that we're going to talk about. And it is just amazing to watch people when they take the limits off. Normally I would ask a live audience, who do you want me to talk about? But I'll just give you a great example. President Clinton had called me. I had been writing about, this was back during his presidency, what if we could get the internet into U.S. schools? What if we could have every student have equal access to the world's knowledge? Sure, some would go and want to watch cats playing the piano, but somebody else would find the cure to cancer. And so the president said, go do it, with one caveat. There wasn't a penny in taxpayer money. Make a long story short, in 18 months, by having a big idea and attracting big minds to it, every classroom in America had Cat5 wire pulled through it by volunteers, and a computer was in every classroom, and that's how America got on the internet. So you can transform not just your life, but you can transform society. And the first way to start is you're not going to get your big ideas sitting at your desk doing the same old every day, day in, day out. Disruption comes from exploring outside of your comfort zone. Do something different. Like I said, if you have problems, what's a big problem? Well, this morning you were in traffic. So you're sitting and thinking about traffic and say, wait a second. So there were 2 kids in Tel Aviv that said, the phone company knows that my phone is in my car and knows that there's a phone in the other guy's car. If we could then figure out how to tell me to go left and him to go right, there'd be less traffic. And that's the basis of ways. You don't need to be an engineer. You need to figure out problems. So here's an example of 3 people that didn't focus on problems. They focused on, here's how we do business. Here's how we'll do it again and again. Blockbuster, kind of obvious. But Blockbuster, their competition didn't sneak up. They named themselves Netflix. They didn't name themselves, I'm going to mail you a DVD in the mail flicks. They said, the internet's going to change everything, and Blockbuster sat and wait. Borders said, we have physical distribution. We don't have it. And the third one, which is kind of hidden in this, is look at the grass growing in the mall. In the past decade, there's not been a single indoor mall built in the U.S., and what a strip center and retail is all about is fundamentally changing. So you really have to realize that the biggest risk in life is not taking a risk. And the biggest regret you'll have in your career is not the things that you failed at, but the things that you failed to try. So if we assume that business as usual, and as we know it, is dead, what does this really mean? Well, Oxford has just completed a study that basically half of the jobs are going to be automated out of existence. It was in the news recently that a number of places have passed a minimum wage of $15. I have no political opinion, good, bad, or indifferent. But in straight facts, what that has done is taught McDonald's to say, wait, let me put a touchscreen kiosk, just like you have for ticketing at the airport, where you can touch your own thing and say, I want a Big Mac and I want fries, and we can replace 5 people per McDonald's per shift times 10, 20,000 stores, whatever it is. So lots of jobs will be changed, lots of jobs will be eliminated, and if you're not figuring out how to survive and how to deal with that change, you're going to get run over. So it used to be, if you got a job at the big Fortune 500 companies, you were safe. You know, you had security. Well, it isn't security that robs ambition. It's the illusion of security that robs ambition. Of the original Fortune 500 companies, that list was started 60 years ago. Only 57 are still on the list. So you're not guaranteed that your job's going to be there. And when you look within those companies, if you want to keep your job, the majority of revenues that each of those companies make will come from products that don't exist today. So Kodak invented in the 80s the digital camera, but it competed with the guy making his bonus from the film group, which had a better margin, so they thought they could stifle innovation, and all that they did was dig their own grave. So when you look at your career, and you look at all these companies in the little ticking time bomb, could your industry be next? Sometimes it's not just companies that go away. The music industry went from $40 billion to the skeleton that it is today. So how do you survive? How do you thrive? I'm sure everybody watching right now has owned or owns something that you see on the screen right now. These are all physical goods that were manufactured, that were shipped, that went to a distribution center, were trucked by a trucker, were sold at a retailer, or put on a shelf, employing lots of people in the supply chain. Oops, where'd my slide disappear? Sorry. Somehow a slide disappeared. Anyway, every single one of those items is now an app. And what's interesting, when they dematerialized into an app of a calculator, an app of a phone, and everything else that's on your phone, is 97% of apps lose money. Apple, or the Android universe, figured out how to make money, but the actual apps themselves didn't necessarily. So you really have to not just figure out how to disrupt the business, but how to capture the value that you're unleashing. So one of the big trends is we're going to what I like to call a post-literate society. Fancy word for illiterate. We're going from text culture to screen culture to images. The majority of the world's photos were taken in the last 14 months, and that statement will be true 14 months from now. We are now creating tons and tons of content. And this content is creating big data, which is allowing new insights for new types of businesses that can do things that were never done before. So according to the best and brightest minds, and I should pop here and say, I get paid a lot of money to predict the future, which is really silly, because the way I predict the future is I hang out with the people that are coding it. So you know what's coming out next, but you don't have to be an engineer to benefit. You can figure out where are the pieces this technology that others have spent billions to create can impact and change and solve. So these are the biggest disruptive innovations coming over the next decade. And 2025 sounds so far in the future, but it's 10 years away. So 3D printing, we talked about, things going in the cloud, energy storage, really, really big. In my book, Disruptive, I talk about a supermarket chain that is using frozen chickens for energy storage. I kid you not, they've cut their energy consumption completely off the grid, and the key success to it was frozen chickens. Internet of Things, hooking up the next 50 billion devices to the internet. If you haven't grasped the concept, it's as simple as this. That grill on the vent that blows air conditioning and heat into your room, imagine replacing that with something that has a motion detector and Wi-Fi. If no one's in the room, it shuts. If it feels somebody's coming down the hallway, it opens up. For a hotel with 1,000 rooms, you could save 40% of their electricity. So big, big changes. Big disruption. From a dollar amount in trillions of dollars, mobile is the biggest. So here's a car factory today. This is what it's like at a Tesla factory. You don't see tons of people. So the big change is disruption is happening exponentially, while businesses with their yearly set planning cycles and fighting last year's lost war or innovating arithmetically. This is why it's so easy for the small independent entrepreneur to upend a 100-year-old multi-billion-dollar corporation. Let's talk about self-driving cars. In the Autobahn in Germany right now, there are 18-wheelers with no driver. What does that do to the over 100 million truck drivers when you don't need it? What happens when Uber is no longer employing people? The big change with Uber that nobody's talking about and writing about is for the first time in history, there is a class of employees reporting to a piece of software, not a human being. You never get to meet your boss. There's no ability for you to get a promotion above the piece of software, and eventually you're automated out. That is the nature of where things are going. Now, this isn't a negative speech. This is an opportunity speech, because at the same time, there's tons of opportunities. What will you be doing in that vehicle? The reason why Apple's going to making cars is not because there's money in cars. It will become an entertainment device. Your fun road trip starts the second you get in the car. It is a place to watch movies, to play games, to shop, to entertain. Controlling that experience becomes the big value. We talked about this, Fortune 500 companies. We've had a recovery from the recession, but the top 500 companies actually employ 1 million less workers than they did before. Those jobs aren't coming back. There's no need for them. There is greater opportunity to work outside the system. So where is that dawn? Where is that sun rising? Well, 85% of the globe now is just a click away. Your total addressable market for your service, your product, your innovation is no longer restricted by geography, by borders, by currency. And the next group joining the internet isn't more people, it's more devices and more things, which give you more data. So ask yourself, if you were Tony Stark, how would you compete in the 21st century? What tools do you have access to that nobody else had? And it's now 95% cheaper to launch a startup than it was just 10 years ago. There are more smartphones out there. There are faster internet connections. So this isn't about, I'm an engineer, how do I write the code? It's how do I use this capability that the first screen you see when you wake up and the last screen you see when you go to bed is that powerful tool that's in everyone's hands that can connect you and allow you to reach heights that you never imagined. If you're going to turn your company into a public company, that whole area has changed where, IPOs for 200 or 400 million were front page news and giant companies. Nowadays, companies are going public for 100 billion and companies are staying private with valuations at 50 billion. It's an amazing time, and one of the interesting things is not only is there more venture capital, but crowdfunding now in the U.S. exceeds venture capital as a source of capital. So amazing opportunity for anybody. So what are these opportunities? We talked about 3D printing, all the manufacturing jobs it implodes, but what it also does is it allows you to come up with custom stuff. It would have been too expensive in the old methodology to make prosthetics for a young boy who would grow every 6 months, meaning the children would have to miss out on their childhood. Think of all the other custom, small run, limited things, whether they're in plastic, whether they're in metals, whether they're in food, that you can now network. You don't even need to own the equipment. You can just set up and be the customer base. If anybody knows what this is where your chicken comes from in the U.S. This is how we make chickens today. You're going to see 3D printing meat. Kosher pork will now be possible. Tremendous opportunities in all types of foods, as well as in medical. UCSD is growing human organs for transplants. Huge areas around that. One of my fellow professors at USC has made a 3D printer for doing buildings. You just hook up a railroad track and keep on pouring concrete, and with no skilled labor, you can build 3-story housing units after a flood, after an earthquake. Tremendous, and NASA's putting big money into this for building in space. When we talk about mobile, it's also how we're using mobile. The picture from 2005 is everybody wanting to be at the Vatican to hear the announcement of the new Pope. In 2013, it's everybody wanting to be at the Vatican, to be a broadcaster and use their CNN truck in their pocket to tell the world what they're seeing. Nest, that thermostat that Google bought, is the same thing. You're using it so you can say, wow, it knows when my phone is a mile from my house to turn on my air conditioning. It's telling Google how many people are in your house, what rooms, what hours, how you live your life to better target. And if you don't think big data is changing, Apple just filed a patent that they got last week to target advertising based on the balance in your bank account, and yes, your bank will sell that information. Ooh, you just got a bonus. Here's that neat jet ski. So if you're thinking of iterating an idea, here's the word for you to leave with today: solo-mo. It has to be social. That's how you're going to get customers and grow virally. It has to be about location and has to embrace mobile. Where do you get a good idea? Here's your homework assignment. Write down 3 problems in your life today. Pretty easy to do the first day. Do that for a month. As the month goes on, you're going to have to look around and say, what are things that you accepted as immovable factor of life, traffic, whatever it might be, and you start noticing that there are things that are more malleable than you realized, and you have more control over your environment. And that's where the big ideas come from. And at the end of the month, you have 90 ideas to sort through. What impacts the most people? And again, you don't need the skill set to write the code or to do whatever it may be. You can hire that skill set. It's really about pursuing it. So look at data. Data beats opinion. Data has no ego. Bring data to every decision and every meeting. I was brought in a company that wanted to take on Victoria's Secret, which does billions of dollars in lingerie, and they wanted to do a celebrity line, you know. So who do you pick? Do you pick the chaste woman or the, you know, one that has a reputation in Hollywood? Do you take the one with an A cup or the one with the D cup? There's a million ways to decide. But you could very quickly do ads with various people's pictures in them and know within a day, running 1,000 clicks, who picks. So try to make all your decisions based on data. And more data will require more creativity. Measuring stuff that doesn't matter doesn't make you successful. It's figuring out what did your exploration, what did your looking at a problem yield that no one else would have come up with because they hadn't gone and looked at what you looked at. So let me go back to that drill. The fun thing about a drill, and read this, everybody listening has a drill. But yet, according to the Drill Manufacturers Association, the people that make the drills, in your entire life you're going to drill for a total of 13 minutes. Wow, I got the IKEA bookcase, zip, 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 okay? Would you agree that it's kind of stupid then to own a drill if software could have a drill delivered for when you need it and pick it up and you know, the Uber of drills? Well, the second you accept that, you realize that access is more important than ownership in the new economy. You don't need to own a lawnmower. You don't need to own a car. The sharing economy is the biggest opportunity out there because it has local, it has social, and it'll be driven by mobile. So there can be sharing businesses on all kinds of fronts. It's a $26 billion domestic opportunity, and we're just at the earliest stages. So most of the best jobs haven't been created yet. That's the opportunity. You can create the universe as you see. So back to, you know, the initial assumption, the more problems you have, the better you're going to have. But you have to start with accepting that your career is now going to be more complex and more fragmented. You know, you're not going to get to be Jon Stewart and hold the same job at the same desk for 16 years. If you want to have something that you've never had, you got to do something that you've never done. It's that simple. So here's 5 things that I highly recommend you to do, and I talk about this in depth, and I'm not one of these psychobabble having you walk through fire and hug you. These are concrete things to really help you work. Why do you set limits on yourself when limits don't exist? And so a very quick story, trying to be sensitive to time. In hockey, in Canada, the greatest hockey players are all born in January, February, and March. This has nothing to do with the stars. This has nothing to do with astrology. How can this be? It turns out that the cutoff date for playing and getting into school was those 3 months. So those 3-month kids were the biggest, which meant at 6 years old, they were a lot bigger than a 5-year-old, a lot more coordinated, and when they played hockey, they were told they were good at it. And when they were told they were good at it, they wanted to play it more. A lifetime of that, you end up becoming a pro hockey player. It's called the Matthew effect. Those that are given much get much. The converse is true also. My mom forged my birth certificate to make me a year older to get me out of the house, which meant I was the scrawniest. I hated sports from day one. By the time junior high school came around and they explained state-sanctioned wrestling, I could have both shoulders on the mat before the other kid touched me. I hated sports. I had a preconceived of what I couldn't do. When I was 40, I said to myself, I have to disrupt this. Let me take on, learn a sport, and embrace it. The point is, if you're told that you're not good at math, not good at this, not good at that, it's not true. You can actually hardwire and change your brain and your IQ and your personality. These things are not hardwired, and there's tons of research that backs it up. So disruption begins with introspection. It's the same as doing plastic surgery, except you hold the scalpel. It's not easy, but if you start realizing where you're limiting yourself, the second you acknowledge it, the limitation goes away. Next one is, I've never met anybody in a negative state of mind that came up with a good idea. So you need to have a positive mindset. If you can just do 2 things every morning, say these to yourself. 1, the future can be better than the present. And 2, I have the power to make it so. I guarantee you, this is called effectuation. And there's studies on that are in the book. But the result is you're opening yourself up to opportunities that you would have missed because you were in a funk. And the biggest one is look at every obstacle that comes your way and go, oh my God, other people have this problem. If I solve it, I'm a hero. So for the women listening, this is a great example. A gal got a job in Florida for a conservative company as a saleswoman, and they required her to wear pantyhose. Wearing pantyhose with open-toe shoes is ridiculous, looks silly, but she wanted to be stylish. Make a long story short, she tried cutting off the toes, different stuff. She eventually solved a way to do it. And she went to hosiery makers, and they all laughed at her because she had no background in the business. She had no, business training whatsoever. She went into Barnes & Noble and bought patents for dummies and wrote her own patent. She couldn't afford a lawyer. The name of her company is Spanx. By solving that one problem, by tackling something that nobody else focused in, Sarah became a self-made billionaire. It really is that easy. And what it comes down to is stop solving your problems, solve others. That's all that an entrepreneur is solving bigger problems. So 10 years ago, 3 guys thought they had all the answers. Before there was broadband, video on the internet was a pain. So every dating site had still pictures. So these guys said, wow, now that there's broadband, let's make a dating site where you can put up a video, you can see that it's current, you can get the person's personality, everything, we're going to make a fortune. But remember I said look at the data. So they put up their site, and they noticed something. Nobody wanted to date anybody on their site, and this is the first dating video from the first day. But something bizarre was in the data. People were sending tons of friends to look at the videos to laugh at or share how weird the people were. So they quickly changed the name of the company to YouTube and became billionaires without ever making a profit or a dime. It's that easy. Look at the data. So start each day with that positive mindset. There is no obstacle so big that one person with determination can't make a difference. In fact, that's all that's ever made a difference in mankind. Commit to lifelong learning. I'm on the wrong side of 50. You wouldn't go to a doctor who was 50 who hadn't learned anything since med school. That would have meant that they're missing out on 30 years of medicine. The same goes for anybody hiring you either as an independent contractor or as an employee, unless your skill sets are up to date. And it only takes an hour a day of reading stuff on the internet to be the foremost expert in any field within 5 years. So that's what Disrupt You is about. I'm not here pushing the book, but I will tell you if this connects with you, follow me on Twitter, email me, go to my website, and I will send you free as my gift for spending your time with me today the companion book. It's a 40-page workbook to help you map out your ideas and your personal transformation. And with that, let me hand it over to Gene and the moderator, and I'm happy to answer any and all questions.
Jay, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm still perplexed how chickens are going to store energy, and how we're going to use.
First?
What's that? No,
Want me
how
to-
chickens are going to store energy.
Okay, so the supermarket chain, it's called Casino. It's in France and South America. They put in solar panels. So during the day, no electric bill. But at night, there's no sun. So somebody had the genius idea, and I don't remember the exact math, but let's pretend that a chicken needs to be frozen at 32 degrees. If you freeze it down to 0 degrees, it's still frozen. It doesn't change the chicken. If you freeze it to -10, it's still a frozen chicken. So during the day, the freezers are doing their thing. At night, nobody's opening the door. So why not drive while you have the sun power, the freezer down to negative something, then during the night, as it slowly warms up, nobody's opening the door. By dawn, it still is at a freezing temperature, and then it starts over again. So they're using the frozen chickens and making them extra frozen to store something.
That's fantastic. Great stuff. So we got a bunch of questions here. So I'll just start reading them randomly here. So one is, Jay, someone's asking, what one thing can we do right away to disrupt the technical security industry?
Okay. Well, the easiest way to disrupt it, and I have a dear friend who's in the book, Tylerson, who does this for a living, is show anybody their flaw, and you instantly have a book of business. So two great guys just hijacked a car, show that anybody can hijack your car remotely, and now they're making a fortune providing security to the auto industry. So, rob a bank and then tell them how you did it, but don't actually rob a bank.
All right, here's another one. Are there any industries that you think are more immune than others of being disrupted?
So everything will eventually get disrupted. Nothing stays the same. We're not living in caves. What slows it and stops it is anytime you're big enough to have political power, legal power, things to slow down. So I'll give you a great example. Most people don't realize, because they're not in the automotive industry, it is illegal for a car manufacturer to sell you a car. So when Elon set up Tesla, he didn't want to set up dealerships. You could buy the car straight from him and make it cheaper. That's against the law in all 50 states. So big guys can set up laws to slow down innovation. He is fighting these laws in every state, and he has enough money to do it. But for most of us, it's really tough to build a business that requires Washington to change.
Good stuff. All right, here's another one. What's the practical first step from ideation to execution?
The first thing is to do what Jesus did, which is find yourself apostles. Find 12 customers, not relative one to tell you you're doing a great job. The idea is to kill your idea. Find 12 people that would benefit from your idea and have them tell you why it sucks. The faster you can kill your idea, the more runway you have and more money you have to solve the business. So speed to fail. And in that, you'll create what I call the zombie idea, the idea that can't be killed. And when you have that, you can then show the data why, and the world will throw money at you growing. I had 2 students in my class who came to me with the best pitch I had heard in a decade. I instantly got them $9 million, and they did $150 million the first year. So go for the zombie idea.
Great story. All right, we've got a lot here. I'm just randomly picking them. Another one is any insights into how the management consulting business will evolve in the future?
It will grow beyond belief, because what you're going to see is more when do I need what skill set mentality, as opposed to we are the giant corporation, here is the PR department with all its staff, here's the marketing with all its staff. It's what do I need and when do I do. So what you want to do, and this is my axiom, the Samit axiom, be the best in the world at what you do or the only one doing it. Because if you're the only one doing it, by definition, you're the best. So how many people have you met that call themselves a serial disruptor? Right now, I'm the foremost serial disruptor in the world. Great advice. Some more. All right.
Can a nonprofit be a successful disruption?
I love whoever
I
wrote
think they
that
mean
question.
disruptor, but go ahead.
I love whoever wrote that question. So again, not pushing the book. The book's divided into thirds. The first third is how you disrupt yourself, because you can't change the world till you change yourself. Second goes through every type of business in the whole value chain, from ideation through distribution. The last third is if you're bored with making money, how you can apply the same principles in looking at people that are doing it in the nonprofit world to change education, climate change. For another day, we'll talk about the Arab Spring. Everybody forgets that there were countries that were overthrown without one bullet or one person dying, all by using social media tools. And Al Ross and friends did amazing stuff with this. So yes, people were doing it to deal with drug cartels. People were doing it for all kinds of stuff. Nonprofits need disruption because many nonprofits are in the business of being a nonprofit, not in solving issues.
All right. Do you think disruption is something anyone can do, or just for people who are naturally less risk averse?
So the one advantage when you look at where most of the change is coming from in the world is the U.S. And when you look at it, the U.S. doesn't have all the world's capital. It clearly doesn't have the best educational system. So why is the U.S. leading in disruption? And the answer to answer, yes, I believe anybody can, is depending on the age of the listener, you grew up either watching The Honeymooners, I Love Lucy, or The Simpsons. But the story was the same. Homer has a get-rich-quick idea. It fails, and life goes on. We have the advantage in this country of understanding that there's a difference between failing and failure. Failing is learning what didn't work. Edison failed 999 times till he had the light bulb, okay? Walt Disney went bankrupt before Disney. Henry Ford bankrupt 3 times. Paul Allen and Bill Gates' first company went belly up before Microsoft. So there's nothing wrong with failing. So if you can get off of that fear, the second part is, yes, there are some people that are born wired differently, and I talk about what they are. And there's a very bizarre handicap that I can't take credit for, but I was told I was stupid because I was dyslexic, as was Disney, as was all these other great innovators, but we process differently. But you can actually rewire your brain and learn how to think differently. So yes, anybody can do it. It is that easy, and I've seen too many regular people do it. And if you enjoyed today, I have a commencement address I did at a university just on that topic of my bunch of friends at UCLA, and everyone became somebody that you now know because they didn't give up. They had persistence. That's all you need.
Great inspiration, Jay. All right, another one. Are there any industries you think should be expecting disruption soon?
Yeah, we missed the past 45 minutes. So anything dealing with manufacturing, anything dealing with transportation, anything dealing with retail, anything dealing with real estate, anything dealing with medicine and wearables, anything that needs a lot of middle people, right? Layers between the end user, that's where it's going to disappear. But to the earlier question of what stops it, so the idea of currency manipulation, governments printing paper, everything going wrong with Greece and the US and China, whatever, the second you have a cryptocurrency like a Bitcoin, the second they stop the laws and it becomes a rational currency, banking as we know it gets completely disrupted. And to tie into the nonprofit question, there's a guy in the book who took $27 and changed and took on the world of banking, the trillion-dollar banking, and the end result was winning a Nobel Prize. He invented micro-lending. So Eunice did some amazing stuff. So yes, there's a lot of change happening.
All right, so you know we have a lot of independent consultants and freelancers and entrepreneurs on the phone. So there's some people here that I'm just going to forward to you, Jay, because they have ideas they want to get your feedback on. We'll just forward those to you. But here's one that's I think a little interesting. So how to position consultancy or the consulting business, right, to leverage its growth by offering contract or services around this 3D printing disruption, especially for non-engineer type of people, so management consulting or other kind of consulting? What are your ideas on how to
So
build a consulting business? Mm-hmm.
I will give you the most bizarre answer, and hopefully it'll help. The answer to your question is Cairo, Damascus, and Istanbul. Okay, smoking crack. Okay, what do those three cities have in common? They're huge cities. They're not moving. They got tons of people. But why do they exist? They were stops along the Silk Road. Okay, the caravan would come in with stuff from China, and so somebody said, "I make chairs. I'm going to show up when the caravan goes in case somebody wants to buy a chair, and somebody else is selling figs, and somebody else, and it becomes a marketplace." The key is you want to develop a marketplace. So I'm dying because I'm at the age where I hope my kids start giving me some grandkids, where I'd love to go to a movie. My grandkid wants to have a Spider-Man toy. You come home and you print out Lego blocks that look like Spider-Man, okay? And you either can pay for them because somebody put up a model or that's licensed, or they're free. So whoever creates, like we did with eBay, whoever creates the community around some aspect of this, so it could be manufacturing, it could be some other piece of the value chain, that's the secret. Once you have a marketplace that has buyers and sellers, that's what Airbnb is, that's what Uber is, that's what Priceline is, that's what Amazon really is. That's where you make the big money. And that's about community and social and mobile. That's not about being an engineer. So,
all right. I'm going to just do two more questions, Jay, because I know you're a really busy guy and we got a lot going on, and we're coming up close to the hour. So I'm going to just do two more questions of a bunch here. But here's one that's kind of interesting. With so many lost jobs in the industries that you mentioned, what do you think the impact will have on the overall economy?
Great question. I'll give you an honest answer, and this is why I've dedicated this last third of my life to teaching entrepreneurship around the world. When I look at what's happening with ISIS, Greece, Ferguson, Baltimore, these aren't issues of race, culture, or religion. These are massive unemployment of those under 30. After World War I, we decided to penalize Germany, and they had massive unemployment of those under 30. When you're under 30, your brain isn't fully formed on risk-reward and long-term outcomes. It only took a couple rebel rousers, and a couple years later, you have 80 million dead. So unless we teach and start getting from teaching people, things in school that are relevant to their life, and teach people how to think this way and how to solve problems and how to become self-sufficient, the idea of a middle class in a stable world falls apart. There will be no one supplying jobs for the masses, so it'll be up to the masses to figure it out on their own. And that's my soapbox.
Yeah, well, really important and very true. I totally agree. All right, I'm going to just make this the last question, and then we're going to just do a little bit of a couple of slides on follow-up. This is a good one, Jay. I don't know if you have an answer to this one, but it's how do you disrupt the healthcare system to make medical services more affordable?
Okay, so as I said, anything that has lobbyists in Washington, and you're talking about trial lawyers, you're talking about insurance companies, you're talking about a number of giant 800-pound gorillas that like being in charge, that's tough. But the flip side is it's not impossible. So you have to start looking about what are you actually solving. And the big place in this is wearables, because you can now control the causes of most cause of death with technology as opposed to treat the symptoms or the outcomes. I mean, what's bankrupting most Americans, most bankruptcies, are medical bills in the last few years of life. Okay? We now have the ability to change it. I wrote a provocative piece in yesterday's TechCrunch that said, driving your car will be against the law in 2030. I never got more back and forth hate mail on anything. You would think I was taking guns out of people's hands. But what I was saying is 500,000 people die globally each year from car accidents. Self-driving cars don't cause accidents, people do. So it's that thinking that will change the healthcare system as well. So I don't have an easy, glib, rhyming, short answer for that one, but it is a huge opportunity. And just as nobody imagined you could come up with Wikipedia without anybody being paid, you can figure out how to get people to work for the greater good if you have a good enough idea.
All right. Well, with that, I'm going to I'll queue up a number of these questions, send them to you, Jay, as some people had some ideas they want to just share with you personally.
Yeah, and anybody can reach out to me, if I can just say, at JAYSAMIT on Twitter, or jsamit.com. I'm easy to get a hold of, and love to help anybody.
And what you have on the screen is basically just kind of select one of those, if and this way it helps us understand the follow-up and how you enjoyed the presentation here. Jay, I can't begin to tell you how valuable I think this is, and we had over 100 people on this call, and I highly recommend to everyone to get your book. Jay is a fascinating individual. Please do build a following and follow him and build a relationship with him online. Jay, thanks so much. We'll be in touch, and really appreciate you doing this webinar with us today.
Have a great day, and I hope this aids everybody in their journey.
I'm sure it did. Thank you, Jay.